How big can I get my heart to be?
Thought Media Network proudly presents
How much love can I get flowing out of me?
The Real Talk Sisters. Deep, unfiltered, soulful conversations with Reverend Dr. Pjae Stanley, Reverend Kim Andrews, and Reverend Melinda Wood Allen.
How big can I get my heart to be?
Join us for Real Talk on Real Issues, Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Central, 1 o'clock Mountain. And now, let's join the Real Talk Sisters.
How big can I get my heart to be?
Hello, hello.
Hello there.
Good to see you, Kim. And
Good to see you.
Pjae is not going to be with us today. She was out and about and having car trouble and is stuck at a discount tire somewhere in town. So we will miss her on this last episode.
Yes, we decided this is our last one, and we've had a great year, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, we thoroughly enjoyed it. Got to share a lot about ourselves and our lives and spirituality, what we do, what we go through, spiritual principle, how to apply it. So it has been a good thing. Yes.
And sometimes it's just time to move on and do the next thing.
It is. Yes. Yeah. And this feels right after we talked about it a little bit. And this feels like the right ending time. And that's good. So even though it's bittersweet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm Reverend Melinda Wood Allen from the Church of One Love in Dallas, Texas.
And I am Kim Andrews, spiritual leader at Unity Spiritual Center in Saxe. And it is good to be here again to do this. And yes, we're missing Pjae today on this last episode together. We were, of course, hoping that the three of us would be together, which we love doing that. But life happens, doesn't it?
It just does. That was the plan. But, plans are things that humans do. And life is what life does. So good to be here, though, on this last day of 2024. Mm-hmm. It's kind of an auspicious place to be. We're at the end of the year. We're at the end of our year together. And we are ending our 4-part series on Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements with the 4th agreement. Always do your best.
Always do your best, yes. Regardless of the quality of your best at any given moment, it is, in fact, your best. Knowing you're always doing your best keeps you from judging yourself and suffering from guilt, blame, and self-punishment. All 3 of which I've been very good at.
Guilt, blame, and self-punishment? Oh, not me. Isn't that funny though, that the number we do on ourselves? I have a chant that I wrote with Patricia Bahia. The words are, "I forgive me for not knowing then the things that I know now."
Yeah.
And Maya Angelou has a beautiful quote about, when we know better, we do better. Mm-hmm. When we didn't know better, we couldn't do better.
Yeah.
And so that's
go for the slide. You can take that down.
Yeah, thanks. That's a lot of the spiritual journey, I think, why we keep studying, why we keep seeking, why we keep reading, why we keep coming together in community, is so that we know, so that we can be reminded of the truth of who we are, what we're capable of, what our power is, what we're connected to, this one love that we're part of, so that we can remember that, so that we can learn more about how to activate it in our lives, so that when we know better, we're able to do better, but not to learn something new so that we can judge everything that's gone before as less than.
Yeah.
That's
which is something I've done. And it's just been probably in the last maybe 7 to 10 years that I moved away from that. But I spent some time really forgiving myself and acknowledging that I did the best I could with the information I had and the consciousness I had at that time.
Mhm.
And it was what it was. And it's not a bad thing. That's just where I was. And that's okay. I did my best and I let all the rest go. It was really a very freeing exercise for me.
Absolutely. And I like how you said the consciousness that you had at the time. I mean,
Mhm.
we cannot do what we're not conscious of.
Right.
I talk to my people a lot about this in class, is that we talk about there always being a choice. You can always choose love, but if you're not aware that there's a choice, then you cannot actively make a choice. And so the way that we tend to judge others for not acting in the way that we would according to the information we have, it's just completely, it's apples and oranges. It's just not the same. It's not the same thing at all. And if we can learn not to hold others to a standard that doesn't make sense for them because that's not their consciousness, then we can learn to not hold ourselves to a standard that doesn't make sense for us because that's not where our consciousness was.
And we've talked a lot this year about extending grace to people. And, you know, when we acknowledge that people are doing the best with what they have, then it is time to extend some grace to them and to ourselves. And sometimes you just have to agree to disagree, or maybe there's no resolution for what's there. You just have to say, we're all doing our best and this is what we got. So how do we move forward from here?
Yeah.
Knowing that.
And
sometimes I think that, you know, it does take the pressure off.
Absolutely. I think one of the most healing conclusions I ever came to that completely changed my life from that day forward was the day that I really understood. And this was after reading, you know, going to recovery groups and reading self-help books and codependency books and finding out why I was the way I was, all my family of origin issues, blah, blah, blah. But the day that I went, and my parents were absolutely doing the best they knew how to do with the information that they had at the time, with the ability that they had at the time. You know, my dad was an addict. When you're in an addiction, you cannot function in the way that someone who's not in an addiction can. And you know, what we know is an addiction is not choice. So when I got to the place where I was like, they really did the best they could. It doesn't mean I'm happy with everything that happened. It doesn't mean that I didn't live through things that that I can give myself some credit, you know, for. I made it through that. You know, I came out the other side. Yay me! But the blame just went away. And the moment the blame went away, I was able to go, like you said, so where do we go from here? These are the parents I have now. They know things now they didn't know then. There's a lot that they still don't know. And there's a lot that I don't know.
Who knew?
Who knew? Who knew I didn't already know everything? I thought I did. I read all those books. But just look at my bookshelf. See how much I know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, yeah, and it really does relax things. And then I think we can have some compassion for ourselves, for others. And maybe after we get to this realization that we've all done our best, maybe there's no problem to fix.
Yeah.
Because maybe, you know, the rub was that we just had these expectations for ourselves or for others that made no sense. And when we can drop that, maybe then you look and you say, okay, where's the steaming pile of stuff now? It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist. And then we can all walk away, like the slide said, without the guilt, the shame, the blame, the self-punishment. Yeah. Just makes life easier.
It does. It does.
And it's easier to be with each other and love each other and accept each other when we can get there.
And I think one of the most important lessons that that I got when I in my first encounter with the Four Agreements and with all encounters since then, because I do make a point to read it again every couple of years, is that my best is different from day to day. On a day when, you know, some days I get up in the morning and it's just not as good a day. You can call it depression, you can call it exhaustion, you can call it there's something going into my body, there's something going on in the atmosphere. Who knows? I don't even have to know why. But some days I'm not going to function at as high a level as I am on other days. And when I can give myself some grace for that, go, well, you know, maybe I don't ask of myself as much today. Maybe I let enough be enough instead of pushing my limits today. You know, on another day, I might wake up and feel ready to take on the world. And on that day, maybe I do push my limits. Maybe I do try to take on more. But I don't judge that day I'm a better person versus the day that I wasn't ready to take on the world, that somehow I'm deficient in some way. Just, it's a different day, different feelings, different body, different things going on in the environment, in the atmosphere. And so our response is going to be different.
Yeah, the best is very subjective.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I always just thought it meant that you had to be excellent, you had to be perfect every day. And, you know, best is, it is. I mean, you have to take stock of where you are and what can you do. And a lot of days I do stop and take time to think, is this a day to push myself or not? And if so, what does that look like? And it doesn't matter what went before. And like you said, the day before could have been different. Tomorrow may be different. But right now in this moment, do I push or do I not push? And if I push and I don't get exactly where I thought I was going to go, perhaps that was my best. And then I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't know till we're in it.
Right. I have plenty of days where I thought that I was going to be gung-ho and get right into this and I get into it. And there is, oh man, something I've noticed as I'm aging. This used to never happen as a performer, and talk about doing your best and the best being different on different days. No matter what, up until probably age 53 to 55, something like that, sometime in the last couple of years, really, my adrenaline would get me through no matter what. Whether if I had bronchitis, so what? If I had strep throat, so what? I was up on the stage. I was going to do it. I was going to do it all. And it did. My adrenaline got me through. Now, was I as good a performer with bronchitis as I was on a day without bronchitis? No, probably not. But I still was giving it all of my energy. And about somewhere between 3 and 5 years ago, and I'll just remember this, I was in the middle of a concert and I was directing choir. I had ensembles singing. I had things I was singing. I had duets I was doing. And about halfway through the second act, I felt like I walked into a wall. It was like energy, nothing. And I had this like moment of panic, like, whoa, this doesn't happen to me. I'm not done with the show yet. It's not time for my adrenaline to just, drop me on my butt. And I quickly just made a decision. Okay, here are the things that have to happen before the end of the concert because they involve other people. Here's something I can skip. Here's something I can skip. Here's something I don't want to skip. So with whatever limited energy I have left, here's what I'm going to choose to use it on. And no one will know except my pianist and the other people in the concert. No one will know that I just let some things go.
Yeah.
And no one did know. And, that day I felt pretty devastated. It was like, this doesn't happen to me. But, you know, pretty much on the heels of that, well, this did happen to me. So immediately it was like, okay, so in the future, what do I need to pay attention to? What I knew is that I hadn't fed myself particularly well, because I had always gotten by with not feeding myself particularly well before a concert. Like, I don't like to eat before I sing. So I'll just
eat either. Yeah.
But what I know is that I don't like to eat, and I don't have to eat a lot, but I need some protein.
You need something to get you through.
2 hours. I'm gonna need some protein, and I need some carbs for energy. And so now my routine now is an apple and peanut butter. Is what I do before a concert. But you know, then I could make a choice about, well, the next time I'm in this position, what can I do to make my best a little better than it was this time? But I didn't have to beat myself up. It had never happened before. I had no way of anticipating that that I would lose energy in that way. And so I handled it, you know, and that's what we do in life, man. As we age, it's just a series of that kind of thing, of coming to a realization that I can't always do what I did before.
Yeah, I think it's important to be flexible and, you know, be willing to find a plan B. Like you said, there were some things you looked at and you said, okay, we don't have to do this song or that song. I used to be so rigid in my planning. And if I set something down, you know, by God, it's going to get done just like that. I was just very rigid with myself. And it was just so stressful.
Yeah.
And just wasn't willing to go one way or the other because I had this thing about perfection. And now I'm so much more flexible. I had a cold, probably, it's gone now, but it took, I guess it started about a week before Christmas. And I was due to sing with my choir and do a solo the Sunday before Christmas on the 22nd. So the cold was, well, I was probably 4 days in. So my voice wasn't right. I was probably singing bass. When my voice wasn't breaking, and I certainly was not hitting any high notes. And the song I was going to do a solo had more high notes than I realized when I got there that Sunday morning and was doing the sound check. And at some point I said, I just can't sing this song. So let me think of what else I can do. So I just picked something else that was easier to sing, something that I could relax in, change some of the phrasing. It wouldn't take as much breathing power, to do the song. And it actually went beautifully just from being flexible and being open and letting the microphone work for me, not trying to power through a song. And it was a very nice experience. And I thought, how wonderful is this when we can be flexible and open and just say that there's another way to do this, and my best is going to look like something other than what I had originally planned. And the fact that it worked even better was an eye-opener for me. Because I thought, because sometimes you think you're settling when you go to a plan B, and sometimes it can be far better than the original plan. And that's what I experienced, Sunday before last. And I thought, oh, I'm kind of liking this flexibility thing, right? Yeah, why not?
Why not? Why not? And that is it's just a huge lesson to learn. I struggled with perfectionism for so long, and I still have remnants of it. It still crops its head up. But man, is my life different now that it doesn't feel like I have to. It'll crop up, and I'll almost immediately recognize, you can do that if you want to. You can do that if you want to, but you don't have to. And before, it felt like I have to. It felt like there's no choice here. If you don't do it perfectly, then you're not doing your best.
Yeah.
And it turns out that that's not actually true. We are about at break time. You want to take a short break now and come back in a minute?
Let's do that now. Yeah.
Awesome. back.
Hold back. Talking about the fourth agreement, always do your best.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the first agreement that's really, really related to this: be impeccable with your word. How one of the ways, Don Miguel Ruiz just defines being impeccable with your word is not using your word against yourself or another. Your word being your thought or your actual language or your actions, not using the power of the word to go against yourself, and how perfectionism is almost a constant using of the word to go against yourself. And it's interesting because as a perfectionist, you think what you are being is impeccable by trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it turns out perfect and impeccable are not the same thing at all.
Yes. Yeah. And I think if we can suspend judgment about what's happening or what's about to happen or what we planned, then I think we can be in a much more open space to find out what else we might do that can be our best. I think when we get into judgments, then we have expectations that can be unreasonable. And that's when we start getting ourselves in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that self-punishment really comes into view there. Yeah, just relax. Just relax.
In 12-step, they say that an expectation is a premeditated resentment.
Ah, that's good.
The moment we set up an expectation, we're almost guaranteeing that, because how often does the world just line up according to our expectations? It generally does not, nor can we always line up to our own expectations. And so we're like pre-deciding that if it doesn't go this way, we're going to not be okay with it.
Yeah. 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 And what a feeling that is, right?
Yeah.
And self-punishment has never gotten me anywhere.
No.
If nothing else, it really hindered me doing anything close to my best. And I can start the self-punishment pretty early. I'm not even into whatever it is I'm doing. I'm already kicking myself. And it just takes away, it saps your energy. It keeps you from doing your best. You're not curious. You're not open. And it was just life was so much easier when I let all that go.
Yeah. In Brene Brown's research around shame, one of the just absolute facts that conclusions that she came to was that shame is never able to create change long term. You can shame someone into doing something different right this minute, but the moment that you don't have the thumb on the shame, then they're going to go back to whatever. Shame is never a precursor of long-term change. Actually, approval, acceptance, love, support, those are all what bring about long-term change. And that goes true. That's absolutely true for the ways that we try to shame ourselves into doing better. I had a roommate when I was very young that had a picture of Brooke Shields on our refrigerator, so that every time she wanted to go get some food, she would look at that picture and realize, I'll never look like that in my Calvin Klein jeans, and like try to shame herself into not eating. And I thought, gosh, that would shame me into eating. I'd be like, I'm never going to look like Brooke Shields. I'm going to eat this cake.
Mine's well, right?
Right. Exactly. Once you set something else, something that is not you, up as your standard, you've consigned yourself to that particular hell. But beating ourselves up simply doesn't work. It simply doesn't work.
Yeah, we don't need others to shame us. Sometimes we can do a pretty good job of shaming ourselves.
And I think about, because really I would say that perfection has been my addiction. I grew up with addiction in my family. My dad is an alcoholic. I'm married. And these are people who have already told me that it's okay for me to share their stories if it's helpful, if it's potentially helpful to someone else. But my husband is a recovering alcoholic. He's been in recovery for over 20 years. And so during my daughter's growing up years, I mean, he got sober when she was 15. So during all of her, young formative years, she had an alcoholic in the house. She also had me, the perfectionist, the one trying to keep control of every single detail of every single thing so that I could feel okay. And she has outright said, if in a house with a perfectionist and an addict, I would take the addict any day. and that's as a person who loves relationship, but she's being very honest about the fact that my perfectionism was much harder on her than his alcoholism was on her.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to make her perfect. I didn't ever think it would affect her because I wasn't trying to make her do those things. I wasn't holding her to a high standard. But what I was doing was modeling my high standard, and how no matter what I did, it was never enough. And no matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. And that I could never sit down. I could never say, that's good enough. I could never come to a stopping place. She just saw me just beating my head against the wall over and over and over and over again. And it was harmful to her. Those are some amends that I've had to make. And I've also had to watch her as this 35-year-old woman who does a lot better job with not dealing perfectionism, than I ever did. She escaped some of that unscathed, but there are parts of her that still respond to that, to the way that she is.
Sure.
And so I forgive myself. I was doing the best I could with what I had at the time. And she wasn't going to get a perfect parent. It wasn't going to happen. So it might as well have been me.
None of us had perfect parents because they were all human.
They were all humans.
They're all human. Yeah.
Humans.
Yeah. Perfectionism, I had it too. And I have some semblance of it now, but it's nothing like it used to be. I mean, I was just out of control with it for many, many years. And it is exhausting to be around. And it's exhausting to be the one who's got the, that perfectionist bent. And when I really started to relax and let it go and realize, the something that's sitting on the table doesn't have to be at the precise degrees shifted to the right.
Yes.
Or that speck of dust on the table, has to be taken up, or all the dishes and you have to wipe the sink clean. I mean, I just had stuff that was incredible to deal with, and I drove myself to exhaustion. And it took me a while just to let it go so that I could start letting myself redefine what my best was. I don't have to be perfect, and something is perfect in the moment, and that's my best.
Yeah.
And just relax about all the rest, because really, the world wasn't going to end if everything didn't work out the way I thought it should. It hasn't yet, so.
It hasn't yet. Zoe put up in the chat, perfect is the enemy of good, Voltaire.
Yeah.
Great quote. Perfect is the enemy of good. And man, is it? Because you would think that striving for perfection, you'd at least hit good. But something about the energy of striving for perfection can leave us so bereft of what's good.
Yeah. Yeah, because that energy, I think, can be very aggressive, rigid, like I said, and it leaves room for nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. It leaves room for nothing else.
So your ability to create, or your desire to create in the moment, is probably slim to none.
Tell a story on myself. because during the years of my perfectionism, I was a choir director for 27 years. And now today, years later, once a year at the Empower Pjae Fest, I direct the Empower World Chorus, which is and we get 2 rehearsals and then we perform in front of the whole assembly and streamed out all over wherever. And so I always was so, and my choirs sounded good. Now they were excellent. They always were excellent. But I look back, and would they have still been excellent if I hadn't had to have everything just perfect all the time?
Yeah.
And I know that they would have. Well, this past year, some people who were literally in my choir when I first started in 1992, when I started my first choir, I had this woman was in it, and she showed up at the Pjae Fest and sang in my choir. How many years later was that? 32 years later. And there was a point at which in rehearsal, there was a place where they kept singing a note wrong. It was every time we got to that same place, they sang it wrong. And so what I did was, instead of drill what I would have done is take this 2-bar phrase and drilled it 47 times until we all got that note right over and over and over again, so I could know it wasn't a fluke and that we would remember it. And that's a perfectly acceptable rehearsal technique if you want to get the note right. But what I did this time was go, let's change the note. Everybody get out your pencil and let's change it from the note that's written to the note that everybody is intuitively singing, because that's just as good a note.
Yeah.
There's no reason. And this person had been in my choir forever. And I kind of made a joke. I said, a few years ago, I wouldn't have done this. And she stood up and said, "Oh my God. Let me tell you how lucky you are to have the Melinda of today versus the Melinda of 30 years ago." And I was like, yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
If you think it was hard to be around me, you should have tried being me. That was some hard stuff. That was some hard stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because probably if I were in that situation, then after I left, I would have been thinking about that one note for hours afterwards, days afterwards, kicking myself about it, thinking about it, how badly it went. They should have sang it this way, should have been this way. Maybe I should have done that. And I can't tell you how many times I've done that to myself.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
So, it's not just before or during something, but afterwards I would continue to kick and punish myself.
We relive the imperfection over and over and over again.
Yeah.
When the truth is, this is the really stunning thing. When you really get that nobody besides you even gives a rat's fanny about it. They just don't care. They just don't care. They just don't care. And what a freeing thing it is to get to the point where, I just don't care. It's fine. That was a good note. It was fine. Let's sing it that way. No one cares.
It doesn't matter to life. Yeah, like you said, probably nobody's going to notice.
No.
Yeah. And it's such, most of these things are such small things.
Such small things.
And I think as I get older, I have much better perspective about things like that. Because there are some things you say, yeah, this really needs to be done like this. But then, I'm much better now at saying this is important and this is why.
Right.
And so, yes, I'm going to push in this regard. And other things I say, you know what? Small stuff.
Right. And if this is,
and most things are small stuff now to me.
Most stuff is small stuff. If this had been Mozart and this had been a chamber choir that was going to sing before an audience of classical, aficionados, then yes, it would have been important to get the note right. Mozart wrote it. Let's get it right.
Yeah.
It was a pop song. It was a pop song. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. And the fact that I was really proud of the fact that I'm at this place. It seems like a small thing, but it was one of those watermark experiences where I saw clearly where I used to be and where I am now, and how completely different they were, and how completely different the feeling around it was, and how completely relaxed, I was about the whole thing. And the deal is, if I had spent an extra 10, 15 minutes of our 3 total hours of rehearsal going over a 2-bar phrase to make 1 note right, what else would we not have had the time to get really musical and beautiful about? Yeah. So it comes down to, how is my time best spent as well? Is it best spent with a toothbrush cleaning the baseboards? Because I think that, I used to literally do that before I would let people come to my house. It had to be that clean. I would literally get down on the baseboards and make sure there was no dust, because I could just see them. They'd sit on the toilet in the bathroom and they would see the dust on the baseboards and they would go, I can't believe Melinda's such a sloppy housekeeper. That's the way I thought.
Oh, I'm with you. I was there. Yes.
Now I'm like, oh, well, if there's dog hair on it, blow it off. and I'm a clean person. I don't keep a nasty house. But what I realize is that you cannot keep things completely clean 100% of the time, because we live here.
Yeah.
And the dogs live here.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we do. I'm glad that we all live here. There's not any of us I would get rid of in order to have the house be cleaner.
And I think there's a lot to be said that, when we're relaxed and we're open and we're flexible, and we're not trying to control everything and be in this perfection, aggressive kind of energy, that we can do things with greater joy. And I think that's so much more important than making things perfect, if that's even possible. And then we can all just enjoy what is happening and have this experience together that we can remember for a very long time and smile at, rather than remember, oh my gosh, I was just driven to distraction about something and it was technically perfect, and yet find no joy in it.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that word, because what if doing our best means doing it with the most joy that we have within us at the moment?
Yeah.
Wow. Always do your best. Always experience the most joy you can in whatever you're doing. What a great way to frame that. What a really great way to frame that.
Yeah, it's so much more important. And I think, you end up just enjoying life. And I think when you realize how precious life is, then having more opportunities for joy is important.
Yes.
Yes. Not worth the fight, is it?
It's not worth the fight. It's really not worth the fight. And it's interesting, again, that first agreement of being impeccable with your word, but the other ones come into play too. Not taking anything personally, not making assumptions. Perfectionism is often based on an assumption that other people are judging me as harshly as I'm judging myself. And if I fall short of, then I'll be judged poorly. So I'm making an assumption that anybody else in the world cares about my baseboards.
That's right.
No one else in the world.
Nobody's thinking about the baseboards.
No one is thinking about the baseboards. They're just really not. And if they are, bless their heart.
Yeah. Bless your heart, sweetheart.
Bless my little heart.
I don't know what to tell you.
I was thinking about the baseboards when I could have been just having a good time.
Yes.
Amazing. Amazing how we do this.
Yeah. Want to take another break?
Let's do that. Thanks, Zoe. And here we are.
The last break of our last show we just had. Yeah.
So another idea about doing our best that I feel like is important is then we are living from the inside out rather than the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
When we're trying to when we're into perfection, we're trying to manipulate outcomes. We're trying to make things on the outside show up a certain way.
Yeah.
When we're doing our best, we're taking stock of what's in here and trying to be as true to what's going on in this moment as we can. So living from the inside out.
Which is always the best way to live.
Always the best way.
Yeah. Because the world is loud and manipulative and not always based on truth. And, we have to be willing to let that go and go within. That's why it's good for me. I always, when I take a break, take a breath and relax and kind of listen to what's happening within me. And then I can determine truly what is my best in this moment. And how do I need to show up to make that happen? But if we listen to the world, then you can't get a good barometer on what you should do. You get a barometer, you can get a ruler, but it's somebody else's idea. Or a narrative, or the collective consciousness, or something like that. And that may not be in alignment with what it is that we truly need to do. Yeah.
And even our idea of what is perfect is so subjective.
Yeah.
It's so, and so much of the time it's based upon our past history or what it cracks me up, because I know during the years when I was really deeply into my perfectionism, to certain people from the outside, they would have gone, "Her, a perfectionist? Are you kidding?" Because the things that were important to them didn't have value for me. There were only certain things I was perfectionistic about, the things that I valued, or that I had some history, or some, what the Buddhists would call a samskara, had some embedded pattern that the energy flow kept running up against, and I, trying to work out, this time I'm going to make that work, rather than getting rid of that pattern, that block within me. And how completely subjective it was, that I was, in my mind, I did it perfectly. And anybody looking outside me might have just been using a completely different yardstick. And no matter the fact that I almost killed myself trying to make it a certain way, we're like, that's not the way I would have done it at all. It's so subjective. And
in my advanced consciousness class, we call those AEPs, or already established premises, that you have these ideas in your head, and that's the way you've always done them. It's the way you've always thought about certain things. And if those things don't match up, then we struggle. And sometimes we have to be willing to get outside of that box and realize you do have a bias, or a certain way that you think about things, or a certain way that you do things. And we can get rigid, and sometimes we don't even know they're in play.
Yeah.
You've got those things going on, you're in that pattern, and it just happens like that. And you're not aware, because that's the way it's always been. And we're kind of just going on autopilot.
Absolutely. And then it's insidious.
Yes.
And then we're breaking ourselves in half over something that has no intrinsic value. It only has the value that we've somehow assigned it because of whatever historical thing. And so once again, that living from the inside out, checking in with what are my values today? What is it? Not what do I hope any particular action is going to look like on the outside, accomplish, but where am I coming from? How do, not what do I want done, but how do I want to be in the action of doing whatever it is.
Yes.
I want to be joyful.
Yeah.
I want to be peaceful. I want to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
And perfectionism is not kind.
No,
It's
not at
kind
all.
to self, and it's really not kind to others. It's
Mhm.
really not kind to others either, because we're
Yeah.
basically making a declaration of what's good enough and what isn't. And either people buy into that and can be harmed by it, or they don't buy into it and they're insulted by it. Or they're just annoyed by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they just want to turn and run. Yeah. Yeah. I know when some of my red flags are when I start saying things like, this is the way I've always done it. It should go this way. It's got to go this way. This is the plan. And if I'm saying it with a particular energy, then I know, okay, back up a little bit and take a breath. Maybe we can be flexible here. But when I start making these declarations about the way something should be done, the way it's always been done, then I know I'm not being flexible, and I'm probably not getting anywhere close to my best. Or I have to let it go and say, okay, my best is something else now.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's absolutely fine, because we get to define it. We defined it in the first place, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we can define it with kindness and with humor and with love and with flexibility. And humor is one of the most important things that we
Yeah.
can bring to
Yeah.
doing our best. Because
Yeah.
if you do it with humor, then you've brought joy into the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You've brought joy into
Yeah.
the situation.
Yeah. I'm so much more willing to laugh at myself now and say, okay, this isn't going well. So, it's so not what I thought it was going to be.
Okay. Plan B.
Plan B. Where is plan B?
And C and D. It's my favorite thing now, truly, when I make plans, is to go ahead and make a plan B and a plan C and know that it may be none of the above. We may go to D, none of the above. What's happening right now? What's the best thing we can do with what's happening right now?
Yes. Yeah. And now I know, and mainly because of this advanced consciousness classes, we talk about the quantum field and billions, trillions of ideas out there. There are any number of possibilities for something in any given moment. And if we can just be open and then allow ourselves to look at things with our God eyes, with our divine eyes, and let spirit come into the mix, then things could happen that none of us could bring to the table by ourselves. And sometimes we just have to let go of ourselves and say, okay, spirit, where do we go from here? What does this look like?
Yeah.
What can this look like? And be willing to step forward in a completely different vein.
So ultimately, to do our best means to be open to what spirit has for us in the moment. Whereas to live in perfectionism is in itself a way that we're limiting spirit's movement. If it has to be this way and this way only, then we've basically said, okay, God, I don't need you here. I got A, I got B, I got C, the corner. I don't need anything else. No more input.
Yes.
The moment we say, yeah, what I need is for that eventually to connect, then we open up the whole quantum field, the whole world of possibility, all of the ways that spirit can come in and go, well, I'm so glad you asked.
Yes.
I got some ideas about that. I got some ideas about that, which I know that you've been completely ignoring because you've had your eye on something else,
Yeah. Finally, you looked and realized I'm always here in the mix, but you don't always let me in the door. Yes.
Yeah. I've been here the whole time, but I was just going to let you do your thing. If that's what you wanted to do, then, fine, go for it.
Yeah.
I often see spirit kind of going, okay, Melinda, you do it. You do that. If you want to do that, I'm going to let you do that. That's how much I love you. I'm going to let you do your thing. You go.
I'll be right here still.
I'll be right here. It's kind of painful to watch you, but you go. Yeah.
I'll be right here when you drive this into the ditch. I'll be in the ditch with you.
I'll be in the ditch with you. Exactly.
It's all good. Bless your heart. Look at you.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart. Bless your heart.
Here she goes again. Look.
Ah,
Yeah, Spirit has said that about me so many times. Bless her heart. Look at her in the ditch again.
there she goes again. There
I'll
she
be right there waiting for you when you fall.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes.
And that's part of, that's the beauty of it. That's part of doing sometimes the best I can do is make a complete mess of things and then only later go, oh yeah, I really carried that to an extreme that was not helpful to anybody. Oh, well. And then in that moment, I get to forgive myself too, in the same way that Spirit already has. Nothing to.
I've acknowledged that sometimes when I'm on my way into the ditch. So,
Yeah. Oh,
I know I'm heading there. I did it myself.
I did it.
Okay, let's just go.
Yeah.
Let's just go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've done that. I'm committed now.
I'm committed.
We go in the ditch. Let's go all the way. Let's not stop on the edge. Let's go right down. See how wet we can get the tires. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we talk about when we're singing, if you're what is it? Wrong and strong.
Wrong.
Sing that note, but sing it like you planned it.
That's right. That's right.
Wrong and strong, baby. I've been wrong and strong on the way to the ditch.
Oh, yes. Yes. But you said it like you meant it. So we all just thought, okay, that must be what she wants to do.
That's right. Planned it that way. Planned it that way.
She planned it that way.
I want to welcome Brian Black to the song, Brian, to the show. Thank you, Brian, for weighing in. He said, New Thought status quo establishment is very rigid and humorless. And then said, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but so much of New Thought status quo wants to stay secret. When we're willing to be proven wrong, then it's okay.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that. Sometimes we're wrong. And we can learn a lesson from that and then move forward. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm with you, Brian. There is what I tend to call New Thought fundamentalism, where people take the principles of New Thought and make them their God rather than letting God be God. And it's not helpful any more than any other kind of fundamentalism is helpful. Yeah. That's the thing about life, is that it's to be lived in the moment. It's to be alive at every moment.
Yeah, and we end up becoming that which we said we were moving away from when we were headed towards New Thought, and we end up being that again.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch that happen.
It is.
And see it in action. Yes.
And see people be harmed, really, in the same ways that other religious fundamentalism harms people.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have been witness to that, and have been, as a minister, really, really sensitive to keeping an eye out for that, for my rigidity in my thinking.
Yeah. So these agreements are not just important for us as individuals, but in our organizations, in our teams or committees we may be on, in our families, in our relationships, because you have in our marriages. So it's not just the individual in a marriage, but it's the marriage, the couple as a couple, to live by these agreements. So anything that we get into to use these agreements can be very, very helpful to all of us. And sometimes we're just not there.
Yeah. Yeah. And the beauty of relationship is that sometimes when one of us isn't, at our best, the other can step in and be that, and that's really important. When I was in my perfectionism, I also wasn't willing to allow a lot of help from the outside, because I already had planned out how I was going to do it. And I was blocking other people from their ability to contribute.
Yes.
to bring good to the situation, to bring their own flexibility, their own creativity, their own ideas. And, it's very, it's something I really watch for. I don't beat myself up for it because that's where I was at that time.
Yeah.
But I want to be really watchful that I can do that I know that that's in me, that I can get so focused on this is the way it needs to be, that I can actually shove other people out of the way.
Yes.
My single-mindedness.
Yes. Yeah.
And I never want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, me either. So how do we only have a few minutes, 4 minutes left. How do we, in a couple minutes, sum up this episode and our year together here in our final episode?
Wow.
Wow. Yes.
Well, I would say that we have done our best.
We have.
We have. And we've given each other a lot of grace.
Mhm.
Because I know personally for me, this past year, my best has been wildly different from day to day, depending upon what was going on in my life. And I was allowed the space for my best to be what it was on any given day. And I allowed myself the space to show up as, this is who I can show up as today. This is how much I have to give today. And to allow that rather than to judge it and to withdraw or, So I guess I would like to say thank you to our producer Zoe, to you, Kim, and to Pjae, and to all of our audience for allowing us to really live these principles this year in our discussions with each other, and in the way that we've shown up on this particular program, doing our best to be impeccable with our word and to truly show up as our best at any given moment.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And yeah, we did. There was so much joy in all of this, and it was easy. And a lot of this had to do with, our wonderful producer who we will just miss, in this, as we move forward, because he did make this so easy for us. I mean, it was just a no-brainer. We just had to show up and be with each other, and he made all the other stuff happen behind the scenes. And so none of this could have happened without him. And it's just been a fun ride. It's really a fun ride, and allowed us to show up exactly as we are. And with whatever energy, whatever our best was that particular day. And it ended up to be very good. And I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I really have. And having this experience with you and Pjae just added another layer to our already wonderful connection.
Yeah.
And because I think what's best about relationships are the experiences that we have together.
Absolutely.
So it was nice that we just took this on and said, let's have this adventure and see what happens.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. And we did.
And we did. And we did.
Yeah, we did. So
showing up for it.
We're grateful to everybody who showed up, everybody who made comments, who listened to us. Our playlist will still be out there on YouTube and on New Thought Media. And so take part in that. I'm probably going to go through and make reference to shows and put them in my social media and use them in different ways. And it was a lot because we did a little less than 52 weeks. Yeah. We had some recordings because of life just showed up. And
48, 49 shows, I think we did.
Yeah, probably so, which was a big commitment. It is a big commitment, but just a wonderful adventure. So I appreciate you. Love Pjae. I'm so sorry she couldn't be here with us this last time. And Zoe, thank you. We love you dearly. We're going to miss you. And thank you for being just the best ever to deal with.
Thank you, New Thought Media Network, for providing the opportunity. We're very grateful.
Absolutely. Yes. So thank you, everybody. And Real Talk Sisters is out. Yes. And seen.
And seen.